The grand chamber was silent. 12 alien representatives sat in a half-circle, their seats rising high above the floor like thrones. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, making the white walls glow. In the center of the room, alone, stood Ambassador Han Jun. He was not a tall man. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and his face carried the lines of someone who had smiled often in his youth. He wore the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No medals, no decorations. Just a small blue pin on his chest showing the planet he called home. Jun had stood in this chamber many times over the past 30 years. He had negotiated trade agreements here. He had argued for peace. He had celebrated victories and mourned losses. But today was different. Today, the Council had called a vote on whether humanity should remain part of the galactic community at all. Hi. Arbiter Velos spoke first. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that held no warmth. His voice filled the chamber without effort. The charges against the human species are as follows. Velos began. First, humans expand too quickly. In 200 years, they have spread to 47 worlds. This rate of growth threatens the balance of established territories. Jun listened. He did not interrupt. Second, human culture is invasive. Their music, their stories, their ideas spread to other civilizations without invitation. Young members of respectable species now imitate human behaviors. This is unacceptable contamination. Behind Jun, his assistant Minho stood with his hands folded. He was young, barely 30, and this was his first major diplomatic event. His job was to observe and record everything. Right now, he was recording the way Ambassador Jun's shoulders remained relaxed. How his breathing stayed calm. Speaker Dren leaned forward in his seat. He was massive, covered in thick brown scales, and his voice rumbled like thunder. I will add to the charges. Humans involve themselves in conflicts that do not concern them. They send soldiers to fight in wars between other species. They send doctors to heal those who should be left to natural selection. They disrupt the proper order of things. Several other representatives nodded in agreement. Their empathy is a weakness they force upon others, Dren continued. They cannot see suffering without trying to fix it. This is not virtue. This is arrogance. They believe they know what is best for everyone. Delegate Ishka shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was insectoid, with large, multifaceted eyes that saw in every direction at once. She had worked with humans before. She had seen their kindness firsthand. But she said nothing. Only Elder Tamai seemed troubled by the proceedings. He was ancient, his amphibian skin wrinkled and spotted with age. He had lived for over 400 years and had seen many species rise and fall. Something about this moment worried him deeply. High Arbiter Velos turned to face Jun directly. Ambassador, you have heard the charges against your species. The Council will now vote on whether humanity should be expelled from galactic society. Before we do, you may speak in your defense. The chamber fell silent again. Every eye turned to the humans standing alone on the floor. Jun took a slow breath. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. It reached every corner of the room without strain. Thank you, High Arbiter. I have listened carefully to the charges. He paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. I will not argue against them. I will not list our achievements or remind you of our contributions. You know these things already? You have chosen to weigh them and find them less important than your concerns. Dren snorted with contempt. But Jun continued without acknowledging him. Humanity joined this council 200 years ago with hope in our hearts. We came as newcomers to a galaxy that was ancient before our species learned to make fire. We asked only to be friends. We offered only our hands in partnership. His voice remained steady. There was no anger in it. No bitterness. Only a deep and quiet sadness. We helped where we could. We learned from you. We shared what we had. When there was war, we tried to make peace. When there was suffering, we tried to ease it. We did these things not because we wanted power or recognition. We did them because that is who we are. Minho watched his mentor carefully. He had seen June argue fiercely for causes he believed in. He had seen him shout and pound tables when injustice demanded it. But now, facing the end of everything humanity had built among the stars, the old man was completely calm. "The Council believes we are a threat," June said. "If you believe the galaxy would be better without us, then we will respect your decision. We will not fight. We will not resist. We will simply leave." He bowed his head slightly. "I ask only one thing. Give us 30 standard days to withdraw our people, our ships, and our operations from Council space. We will go quietly. We will harm no one. And we will wish you well." The silence that followed was heavy. Several representatives exchanged glances. They had expected arguments. They had expected threats. They had expected humans to fight, as humans always seem to fight for everything. This calm acceptance confused them. High Arbiter Velos recovered first. "The Council will now vote. All in favor of expelling humanity from galactic society, indicate your consent." One by one, the lights above each seat turned red. Dren, then Velos. Then others, one after another. Ishka hesitated for a long moment before her light turned red as well. She could not meet June's eyes. Only Elder Tamai's light remained dark. He was the sole vote against expulsion. "The vote passes 11-1, Velos announced. "Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council and all associated territories. Ambassador Hanjun, your request for 30 days is granted. Use them wisely."
Ow.
June bowed again, deeper this time. "Thank you, High Arbiter. I wish the Council peace and prosperity." He turned and walked toward the exit. Minho fell into step beside him. As they passed through the great doors, Minho noticed that June's hands were trembling slightly. The calm had cost him more than he had shown. "Sir," Minho whispered, "what do we do now?" June did not slow his pace. "Now we leave Minho with dignity, with grace, and we make sure they remember exactly what they have thrown away." Behind them, in the chamber, Elder Tamai watched the doors close. He turned to Iska, who still could not lift her gaze from the floor. "We have made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. She did not answer. But somewhere deep in her chest, she felt a cold weight settling. It felt like the beginning of regret. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity had been expelled. The humans were leaving. On 100 different worlds, alien news programs discussed the decision. Most celebrated it. Humans had always been too loud, too emotional, too involved in everything. Now the galaxy could return to the way things were supposed to be. Calm, orderly, proper. But on those same 100 worlds, something else was happening. Something quieter. In hospitals and refugee camps, in war zones and disaster areas, humans were packing their bags. Commander Tay stood on the bridge of the defense station above the Voran border. For 40 years, human peacekeepers had maintained the fragile peace between two species that hated each other deeply. The Voran on one side, the Keth on the other. Without human ships patrolling the neutral zone, both sides would attack within days. Everyone knew this. The Council had sent replacement officers to take over the station. They arrived expecting chaos. They expected the humans to resist, to make the handover difficult, to sabotage the systems out of spite. Instead, they found Commander Tay waiting with organized files, detailed reports, and a complete operations manual. "Everything you need is here," Tay told the Council officer who would replace him. "Patrol schedules, communication protocols, contact information for both sides. The Voran commander respects strength. The Keth commander responds better to patience. I have included notes on how to handle both." The alien officer stared at the thick folder in his hands. "Why are you helping us?" "We are the ones sending you away." Tay's expression did not change. "You did not send me away. Your council made a political decision. These people on both sides of the border will suffer if this handover fails. They have done nothing to deserve that." He walked the replacement through every system on the station. He introduced him to the key personnel. He even shared his personal notes on keeping the peace. Lessons learned through decades of careful work. When the final human transport arrived to take Tay and his crew away, the replacement officer stood at the airlock to see them off. "Commander," he said, struggling to find words, "I do not understand your people." Tay smiled slightly. It was a tired smile. Perhaps that is why the council voted as they did. They do not understand us, either. The airlock closed, and the transport departed. On the industrial world of Kethos 4, Chief Engineer Yuna was facing a different challenge. Her team had spent 15 years building and maintaining the atmospheric processors that kept the domed cities alive. Without these machines, the toxic air of the planet would kill everyone within weeks. The council had sent engineers to take over the systems. They were smart, capable people, but the technology was human-designed. It worked in ways that made sense to human minds but confused others. Yuna could have simply handed over the keys and left. Her orders did not require her to train replacements. No one would have blamed her for following the rules. Instead, she spent her final 2 weeks teaching. She worked 18-hour days explaining every system, drawing diagrams, writing manuals in 3 different languages. She answered every question, no matter how basic. She never showed frustration, never complained, never reminded anyone that her people were being thrown out like unwanted guests. On her last night on Kethos, a young local engineer approached her. His name was hard to pronounce, a series of clicking sounds, so she had called him Click during their training sessions. He had been her best student. "Engineer Yuna," he said, "may I ask you something personal?" She was packing her tools, the same tools she had carried across 20 different worlds over her career. "Of course. Why did you stay so late every night? Why did you work so hard to teach us? Your council has rejected you. These are not your people anymore." Yuna stopped packing. She looked at Click for a long moment, and her eyes were wet with tears she refused to let fall. "You are someone's child," she said softly. "Everyone in those domes is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. The council did not expel you. The council expelled me. Why should you pay the price for their decision?" She picked up her bag and walked toward the transport. At the door, she turned back. "Take care of them, Click. Promise me," he promised. On 14 different worlds, Dr. Hannah and her medical teams were packing up their clinics. Each one had been built with human donations, staffed with human volunteers. They had treated millions of patients over the years, species who could not afford proper health care, refugees from wars, survivors of disasters. The council had ordered all human medical operations to cease. Local authorities would take over the facilities. Hannah refused to leave her patients without supplies. She spent the final days organizing 6 months of medical equipment and medicine for each clinic. She wrote treatment protocols for ongoing cases. She recorded instructional videos in 8 different languages. Her assistant, a young woman named Sue, asked her why she bothered. "They voted against us. They do not want our help." Hannah was checking inventory, her movements quick and efficient. "The politicians voted against us. The sick child in bed 7 did not vote against anyone. The pregnant mother in room 12 did not vote. They just need help. And we can still help them, even from far away." She left communication equipment at each clinic with instructions for reaching human medical consultants. The council had forbidden direct contact, but Hannah included the information anyway. "If they need us badly enough," she told Sue, "they will find a way to call." Back on Axis Prime, Ambassador Han Jun was finishing the paperwork. There was so much paperwork: exit permits, transfer documents, closure reports. He signed each one without complaint. Some council officials came to gloat. They expected him to be bitter, to make accusations, to threaten revenge. He disappointed them. He shook their hands, thanked them for their years of cooperation, and wished them well. One young official asked him privately if he was angry. June considered the question carefully. "Anger is easy," he said. "It feels powerful, but accomplishes nothing. We will leave you with our dignity intact. Perhaps someday you will understand why that matters more than anger ever could." On the 30th day, the last human vessel prepared to depart from council space. It was a simple transport ship, carrying the final group of diplomats and their families. Minho stood at the window, watching the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, waiting for them. Somewhere out there was home. Ambassador June stood beside him. "Are you recording, Minho?" "Always, sir. Could record this moment?" "The exact time we crossed the border?" "The exact position of the stars." June's voice was steady, but his eyes were sad. "Someday they will want to remember when it all began to fall apart. This is that moment." The ship crossed the border into neutral space. Behind them, Council's territory grew smaller and smaller until it was just another patch of stars. On Axis Prime, Delegate Ishka stood at her window, watching sensors track the last human ship. When it disappeared from her screens, she felt something she had never experienced before. A coldness in her chest, an emptiness. Elder Tama found her there an hour later, still staring at the empty screen. "They really left," she whispered. "No fight. No protest. They just left." "Yes," Tamai said quietly. "That is what frightens me most. They left because they trusted us to manage without them. And I fear they were wrong to trust us at all." The galaxy continued to spin. The stars continued to burn. But something had changed. Something important was missing. It would not take long for everyone to notice. 3 months passed. At first, the galaxy celebrated its freedom from human interference. Council broadcasts praised the decision. Politicians gave speeches about returning to traditional values. Everything seemed fine. Then the reports began. On Kethos 4, the atmospheric processors started failing. It began with small malfunctions. A filter here, a valve there. Click and his team worked day and night to fix them, using the manuals Yuna had left behind. But the problems grew faster than they could solve them. The technology was strange to them. Human engineers thought differently. They built machines that worked together in ways that seemed almost alive, each part talking to other parts, adjusting and adapting. When one system failed, it affected everything else in ways that were impossible to predict. By the second month, Dome 7 was on emergency oxygen. Families crowded into the central areas where the air was still clean. Children wore masks. Old people struggled to breathe. Click sent a desperate message to the council, requesting technical assistance. The council sent engineers from 3 different species. They studied the systems for 2 weeks. They argued among themselves about the proper approach. They filed reports and requested additional resources. Meanwhile, people died. A young girl named something that translated roughly to morning light was found unconscious in her family's quarters. The air filters in that section had failed during the night. She was 7 years old. She never woke up. Her mother held her body and screamed at the council officials who came to investigate. "Where are the humans? Why did you send them away?" They would have fixed this. They always fixed everything. The officials had no answer. At the Voran border, the war had already begun. The council replacement commander had lasted 6 weeks before the first shots were fired. He had followed all the protocols Tay left behind. He had tried to be strong with the Voran and patient with the Keth, but he did not have Tay's experience. He did not understand the subtle signals, the hidden meanings, the decades of carefully built trust. When a Voran patrol crossed into the neutral zone by accident, he responded with a warning shot. It was the correct response according to the rulebook. But Tay would have known that this particular Voran captain was the nephew of their high commander. Tay would have handled it quietly, privately, without involving official channels. The warning shot became an insult. The insult became a demand for apology. The demand became an ultimatum. And then the shooting started. Within a month, the border region was burning. Refugee ships fled in every direction, carrying millions of desperate people with nowhere to go. Council stations were overwhelmed. Food ran short. Medicine ran out. People died in corridors waiting for help that never came. Speaker Drin dismissed the crisis in his official statements. This conflict was always inevitable, he said. Humans merely delayed it. Now, natural forces will determine the outcome, as they should. But the refugee numbers kept growing, and the death toll kept climbing on Nexus Station. The plague arrived without warning. It was a mutation of a disease that Dr. Hannah's team had been monitoring for years. They had identified it early, tracked its development, and were working on a treatment when they were forced to leave. All their research went with them. The first victims appeared in the lower markets, where traders from 100 different worlds mixed together. The disease spread through the air, through touch, through water. By the time the station authorities realized what was happening, thousands were infected. Council medical teams rushed to respond. They were skilled and dedicated, but they had never seen this particular disease before. They did not have Hannah's years of observations. They did not have her notes, or her samples, or her theories about treatment. They tried everything they knew. Nothing worked. The death toll passed 1,000 in the first week. 2,000 in the second. The station was quarantined, strapping millions of people inside with a disease that no one understood. In the council chambers, arguments erupted. Delegate Ishka demanded they contact the humans immediately. They knew about this disease. They have research. They could help us. Speaker Dren refused. We expelled them for a reason. Asking for their help now would make us look weak. We will solve this ourselves. People are dying. Ishka shouted. People die every day, Dren replied coldly. It is the natural way of things. High Arbiter Velos said nothing. He sat in his silver throne and watched the arguments flow around him. His face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the armrests tightly, beyond the political centers. Ordinary people were beginning to ask questions on trading routes that humans used to protect. Pirate attacks increased by 300%. Ships that once traveled safely now needed armed escorts that most merchants could not afford. Insurance prices exploded. Trade slowed. Prices rose. Economies that depended on interstellar commerce began to struggle. On poor worlds where humans had built hospitals and schools, those buildings now stood empty. No one else volunteered to staff them. No one else donated supplies. The council had no budget for charity work. It was not their responsibility to care for developing species. On worlds where human peacekeepers had maintained order, old conflicts resurfaced. Groups that had learned to live together under human mediation now remembered why they had hated each other. Violence spread like fire through dry grass, and everywhere people whispered the same question. Where are the humans? Why did they leave? Why is no one helping us? Elder Tamai worked alone in his quarters, compiling a report. He was old and tired, but he could not rest. Each day brought new numbers, new crises, new deaths. He documented everything with careful precision. Kethos. Why? Pick dead from atmospheric failure. Ongoing Vorin. Border. 34,000 dead in military conflict. 2.3 million refugees. Ongoing Nexus Station. 4,200 dead from plague. Station quarantined. Ongoing. Trade disruption. Economic losses. It's estimated at 7 trillion credits. Ongoing. He added notes beside each entry. Systems that humans had built. Programs that humans had run. Services that humans had provided. All gone now. All replaced with nothing. When he finished, the list filled hundreds of pages. And these were only the major crises. He had not even counted the small things. The countless daily acts of human kindness that had kept the galaxy running smoothly. The volunteers and the teachers and the aid workers, the people who showed up when no one else would. Tamai sat in the darkness of his quarters and felt the weight of 200 years. Pressing down on him, he had voted against expulsion. He had warned them. But warnings meant nothing now. On a refugee ship fleeing the Vorin border, a mother held her children close. They had lost their home, their possessions, everything they had built over generations. They did not know where they were going or what would happen to them. Her youngest child looked up at her with frightened eyes. Mother, the humans who used to help us. Where did they go? She stroked his head gently. They went home, little one. Why? She did not know how to answer. How could she explain politics and votes and council decisions to a child? How could she explain that the people who had protected them were sent away by others who had never needed protection? I do not know, she said finally. I do not know why. The ship flew on through the darkness between stars. Behind them, the galaxy continued to burn, and somewhere, far beyond the Council's borders, Earth waited in silence. 6 months after the humans left, Elder Tamai requested an emergency session of the Galactic Council. His request was denied twice. High Arbiter Velos did not want to hear bad news. Speaker Dren called the old amphibian a pessimistic fool who had lost his nerve, but Tamai was patient. He had lived for 100 years. He knew how to wait. He began sharing his report with other delegates privately. First, Delegate Iska, who read it with growing horror. Then the representatives from the Outer Rim, whose territories were suffering the worst effects. Then the Trade Alliance members, who were watching their economies collapse. One by one. They demanded the session Velos had refused. When 11 delegates formally requested an emergency meeting, the High Arbiter had no choice. The rules were clear. He could not deny them. The Grand Chamber was full when Tomai took the floor. Every seat was occupied. Advisors and assistants crowded the galleries. News drones floated overhead, broadcasting 2 billions across the galaxy. Tamai stood where Han Jun had stood 6 months before. He was bent with age, his skin dry and spotted, his movements slow, but his voice was strong. "I come before this council to present facts," he began. "Only facts. You may interpret them as you wish, but you will hear them." He activated a display screen that filled the center of the chamber with light. Numbers began scrolling. Images appeared. Data streams flowed. Kathosphore Tama said. Atmospheric failure across 7 domes. Current death toll, 2,847. Projected additional deaths if systems are not repaired, 340,000. Within the next 3 months, the numbers hung in the air. No one spoke. The Voran border conflict. Military casualties, 89,000. Civilian casualties, 156,000. Refugees, 4.7 million. Estimated economic damage, 12 trillion credits. The war shows no signs of ending. Dren shifted in his seat but said nothing. Nexus Station Plague. Confirmed deaths, 23,400. Current infected, approximately 180,000. Fatality rate, 34%. The station remains quarantined. We have no cure. Tamaya paused, letting the weight of the numbers settle over the chamber. Trade route disruption. Piracy, up 400%. Insurance rates have tripled. 17 major shipping companies have declared bankruptcy. Food prices on import-dependent worlds have increased by an average of 60%. He changed the display. Now it showed a map of council space covered in red markers. Every red point represents a crisis that did not exist 6 months ago. Every single one can be traced to a system, program, or service that humans operated before their expulsion. The chamber was utterly silent. I did not make these numbers, Tamai continued. Reality made them. I simply wrote them down. The question before this council is simple. What will we do about it? Speaker Dren rose from his seat, his massive form blocking the light behind him. These are temporary difficulties. Every transition period has challenges. We will adapt. We will overcome. Calling for human help would be an admission of weakness that our enemies would exploit. Our enemies. Tamai turned to face him. Look at the map, Speaker. Our enemies are not attacking us. We are destroying ourselves. What enemy could do to us what we have done in 6 months? The humans never could have conquered us through war. They did not need to. All they had to do was leave, and we began to collapse. YSSKA stood. Her voice was quiet but firm. I voted for expulsion. I was wrong. I admit this now, before the entire council. We must contact the humans and ask them to return. Ask. Dren laughed bitterly. You mean beg? You want us to beg the species we threw out to come back and save us? Yes, Ishka said simply. That is exactly what I want. Because the alternative is watching millions more die while we protect our pride, eh? The arguments erupted like a storm. Delegates shouted at each other. Accusations flew. Old grudges surfaced. For nearly 2 hours, the chamber was chaos. Through it all, High Arbiter Velos remained silent in his silver throne. He watched his council tear itself apart. He watched the numbers on the display that would not go away no matter how loud the shouting became. Finally, he raised his hand. The chamber fell silent immediately. Whatever else he was, Velos still commanded respect. "We will vote," he said. His voice was flat, empty of its usual arrogance. "The question is whether to send a formal request to the human government, asking them to consider returning to council space. All in favor." Lights began turning green. Ishka, the Outer Rim delegates. The Trade Alliance. One by one, they voted yes. Even species who had celebrated the expulsion 6 months ago now voted for reversal. Speaker Dren's light remained red. He crossed his arms and glared at his colleagues with contempt. But when the count finished, it did not matter. The vote was 11-1. The same margin that had expelled humanity now begged for their return. A message was drafted that same night. It was carefully worded, diplomatic but clear. The council acknowledged that circumstances had changed. The council recognized that human contributions had been valuable. The council respectfully requested that humanity consider resuming their partnership with galactic civilization. It was not an apology. The council was not ready for that. The message was sent to Earth through the fastest channels available. Then the council waited. They waited 1 day, then 2. Then a week. The Nexus Station plague continued to spread. The Voran War continued to rage. The atmospheric systems on Kethos continued to fail. And Earth remained silent. Velos grew impatient. He sent a second message, more urgent than the first. He emphasized the humanitarian crises. He stressed the importance of quick action. He came as close to begging as his pride would allow. Still nothing. Why SSK approached Elder Tamai in the corridors of the council building. Why do they not answer? Do they not care about the people dying? Tamai sighed heavily. Oh, they care. They care more than we ever understood. That is why they built all those systems we are now watching fail. That is why they volunteered for the dangerous jobs and the thankless work. Then why the silence? The old amphibian looked at her with ancient, tired eyes. Because we made them wait, delegate. We made them stand in that chamber and listen to us list their crimes. We made them defend themselves against charges they did not deserve. We made them pack their belongings and leave their posts and say goodbye to people they had served for decades. We gave them 30 days to erase 200 years of work. He turned and walked slowly down the corridor. Now they are making us wait, not for revenge. Humans are not cruel enough for revenge. They are making us wait so that we understand what waiting feels like. So that we remember this feeling the next time we consider throwing away something precious. 2 weeks after the message was sent, a reply finally arrived. It was a single line from Ambassador Han Jun. We received your message. We will discuss it among ourselves. Please be patient. Velos stared at the words for a long time. Please be patient. The exact words he had used when granting humans 30 days to leave. The exact words. He finally understood what Tamaya had tried to tell them. The humans were not being cruel. They were being teachers. And the council was learning a lesson it would never forget. Dren stormed into the chamber and demanded they send a stronger message. He wanted to threaten consequences. He wanted to remind the humans that the council still had military power. Velos did not respond. He simply handed Dren the casualty reports from that morning. 347 more dead on Nexus Station. 89 more dead in the border war. 12 more dead on Kethos 4. What consequences would you threaten? Velos asked quietly. We are already suffering every consequence that matters. The humans do not need to punish us. We are punishing ourselves. Dren had no answer. For the first time since the expulsion vote, he had no words at all. The council continued to wait, and across their space, the galaxy continued to fall apart, one piece at a time. 1 year after their departure, the humans returned. They did not wait for the negotiations to finish. They did not wait for the council to agree to their terms. They simply came because people were dying and humans could not ignore suffering. No matter who had caused it, the first ship to cross back into Council space was the Mercy, a massive hospital vessel carrying 3,000 medical staff and enough supplies to treat 100,000 patients. It flew directly to Nexus Station, where the plague had now killed over 40,000 people. Dr. Hannah was on board. She had spent the past year studying the disease from the samples she had secretly kept. She had developed a treatment. It was not a cure, but it could save lives. The station authorities did not know how to react. Technically, humans were still banned from Council space. The negotiations were ongoing. Allowing the Mercy to dock could be seen as a political statement. Then another 300 people died overnight. Politics stopped mech. Hannah and her team spread through the infected areas like a wave of hope. They worked around the clock, treating patients, training local doctors, distributing medicine. Within 2 weeks, the death rate had dropped by half. Within a month, the plague was under control. No one on Nexus Station complained about human interference. Behind the Mercy came more ships. Engineering vessels headed for Kethos, for carrying equipment and specialists who understood human-designed systems. Relief transports flew to the refugee camps along the Voran border, carrying food and medicine and volunteers who asked nothing in return. Commander Tay returned to the border region. He did not take back his old command. Instead, he worked alongside the Council officers who had replaced him. Advising without criticizing, helping without demanding credit, the Voran and Keth were still at war. But with Tay's guidance, the Council forces managed to establish humanitarian corridors. Refugees could escape the fighting. Medical teams could reach the wounded. It was not peace, but it was better than before. Chief Engineer Yuna arrived on Kethos 4 with a team of 50 specialists. The atmospheric processors were in critical condition. 2 domes had already been evacuated. Another 3 were on emergency power click. Met her at the transport dock. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from sleepless nights. He had done everything she had taught him, but it had not been enough. "I tried," he said. "I followed all your instructions. I am sorry. I failed." Yuna put her hand on his shoulder. "You did not fail. You kept them alive until we could return. That is not failure. That is courage." They worked together for 3 weeks, repairing systems, replacing parts, rebuilding what had broken down. The atmospheric processors came back online one by one. The air cleared. People took off their masks and breathed freely for the first time in months. On Kethos 4, no one asked why the humans had left. They only celebrated that the humans had come back. While all of this was happening, Ambassador Han Jun arrived at Axis. Primed to negotiate the terms of humanity's return, the Council chamber was different now. The seats still rose high, the walls still glowed white, but the arrogance was gone. The representatives who had voted to expel humanity now sat quietly. Humbled by a year of consequences, June stood in the center of the room, just as he had stood 1 year before. Minho was behind him, recording everything. "The government of Earth thanks the Council for its invitation," June began. "After careful discussion, we have decided to accept." A wave of relief passed through the chamber. Velos allowed himself a small nod. However, June continued, "We will not return as we were before. We have learned from this experience just as you have. We will no longer serve in silence." He handed a document to Velos. "These are our terms." The Council read the demands in shocked silence. Every human contribution would be documented and reported publicly. No more invisible service. No more unacknowledged sacrifice. When humans built a hospital, everyone would know. When humans stopped a war, everyone would know. Human representatives would have full voting rights on the Council, not observer status. Their voices would carry equal weight with any other species, any future vote regarding humanities. Membership would require unanimous consent, not simple majority. No more expulsion by narrow margins. And finally, any world that had benefited from human aid would have the right to maintain direct relations with Earth, regardless of Council politics. The Council could not cut humans off from the people they had helped. Dren slammed his fist on his seat's armrest. These terms are outrageous. You are asking us to surrender our authority. June looked at him calmly. We are asking you to recognize what you should have recognized long ago. We are not your servants. We are your partners. Or we are nothing to you at all. The choice is yours. The debate lasted 3 days. Dren argued against every point. But when the final vote came, he stood alone. Every other representative accepted the human terms. They had no leverage. They had learned too well what the galaxy looked like without humans in it. Velos signed the agreement himself, his silver hand trembling slightly as he pressed the seal to the document. He did not apologize. He could not bring himself to say those words, but his silence spoke louder than any apology could have. After the ceremony, Elder Tamai approached June privately. They stood by a window overlooking the stars, two old beings who had seen too much. I am sorry, Tamai said. I voted against your expulsion, but I did not fight harder. I should have spoken louder. I should have warned them more clearly. June shook his head. You did what you could. We do not blame you, Elder. We do not blame any of them, truly. They made a mistake. Beings make mistakes. What matters is what happens next. Why did you come back? Tamai asked. After everything we did to you? After the insults and the accusations and the year of silence? Why help us at all? June was quiet for a moment, watching the stars turn slowly outside the window. When he spoke, his voice was soft, because you needed help. That has always been enough reason for us. We did not help you before to earn your gratitude or respect. We helped because helping is what we do. That has not changed. He turned to face Tamai. Perhaps now you will remember. Perhaps the next time someone suggests that human contributions do not matter, you will think of this year. That is all we ask. Remember what you learned. Tamai bowed deeply, a gesture of respect among his people. We will remember, Ambassador. I promise you that. In the months that followed, the galaxy slowly healed. The plague was conquered. The atmospheric systems were repaired. The border war ground to a halt as both sides, exhausted and devastated, finally accepted the peace that humans had offered them for decades. Trade routes reopened. Refugees returned to their homes or built new ones. Children went back to schools that humans had rebuilt. Hospitals treated patients with medicine that humans had developed, and everywhere. On 100 different worlds, people told the story. They told their children about the year the humans left. They told them about the darkness that followed. And they told them about the day the humans came back, not for revenge, not for glory, but simply because someone needed help. On Axis Prime, a young delegate approached Ambassador June in the corridor. She was newly appointed, barely more than a student, and she had not been present for the original expulsion vote. Ambassador, she said nervously, may I ask you something? June smiled gently. Of course, why did your people come back? After how you were treated, after everything that happened, I do not understand. Minho stood nearby, still recording as he always did. He watched his mentor consider the question the same way he had considered it 100 times before. Because the galaxy needed help, June said simply. That has always been enough reason for us. He patted the young delegate on the shoulder and continued walking, Minho falling into step beside him. Behind them, the young alien stood in the corridor, watching them go. Something in her chest had shifted, something she did not have words for yet. It felt like the beginning of understanding. The stars continued to turn. The galaxy continued to spin. But now, when beings looked up at the sky, they saw something different than they had seen before. They saw hope, and they remembered where it had come from.